the whole story is like, it's like the perfect storm of circumstances, and then like self-doubt starts to set in, and it's so easy, especially when you don't have this stuff on film. Like, you replay that stuff over and over in your mind, and like you play so many scenarios through your mind. After a couple of days, it's like you can't even remember what is actually real and what you're maybe thinking that could be made up, or like you forget how it happened.
Lights, camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera!
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
Trail Cam Radio from the guys at Exodus.
Here we go. We're back in the studio, December 18th. It's a little chilly here. Our thermostat. Our thermostat is not yet hooked up, and it's about 20 degrees outside. So we have a bunch of little electric heaters running at the office, and but we're still happy to be here. Happy to be back at the office, and Cameron has some really exciting news to talk about.
I sure did. I got a call yesterday from my dad that the buck that I shot in Pennsylvania was recovered by the neighbor, and he actually only died like 150 yards from where I shot him, but I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. You getting that text? Was it a text or a call?
He called me like freaking out.
Right.
He was like, Cameron, we found your deer. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, it's on my front porch. I have your buck right here.
That's funny. So that just happened. Today's Wednesday. That just happened Monday. We were over there, and we were going to be in the area anyways to record a Whitetail Cribs episode. So we kind of scooted out of here a little early and ran over there and for you to grab them.
Yeah, I was actually out shooting a video on some late season render settings with Mike Adams, and went to get lunch, and Mike was saying, like, Cam, the Queen of Hearts drawing down in Hubbard's $300,000. Like, we should go. And as soon as he said that, my dad called, and I was like, lottery. My dad's calling me, telling me my buck was found. I was like, today's a lucky day. So went and played the Queen of Hearts. Did not win, but that was like $322,000. But
that'd been a nice little bump.
Yeah, but yeah. So I ate lunch, waited for you to get back from the post office, and went out and got to recover the deer.
So for anyone, I know we briefly talked about this. I think we talked about this in a past episode, right?
A little bit. The last time we talked about it, we just talked about like the roller coaster of my season.
Right. So I guess take us back 4 or 5 weeks back to November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, in that time period, and tell us like how that hunt played out, why you were there, how you were set up on a deer, how he came in, how you shot him, what you like, everything. Just tell us just recap the whole story.
All right.
Up until Monday.
Okay. So it actually, we can rewind further. We can go back to last year. My dad this is the first year we hunted this property. He has 55 acres or so in his backyard from the guy he rents off of. And we hunt a property in Pennsylvania that we've been hunting forever. And I was like, Dad, you have 55-some acres in your backyard. Like, we should hang some cameras and see what's around. And he goes, we hang these cameras in August. He goes until, like, November 1st to check the cameras. Doesn't check them at all. And it turns out there's, like, 3 or 4 shooter bucks. And I'm spending a week in a hotel in Clarion, Pennsylvania, and I saw 7 deer total in a week. Meanwhile, in his backyard, there's a bunch of slammers. And my dad, his first hunt of the year, actually, is November 12th. His first time, or no, November 10th, the day before my birthday. First time he went out all year. Gets a shot at the biggest buck on the property. Nice 10-point. Just completely blows the shot. Somehow, I don't know what he did, but its arrow ended up 50 feet in top of a tree. But the day after, that's my birthday. second to last day before the PA archery season ends, because it ends super early. But I have this buck that it's like a nice tall framed buck, not very wide, just pretty tall, at 5 yards. But I'm in a ground blind and I can't shoot to where he's at. He's locked up with the doe. The doe will not come out in the open. He's not coming out. So they work off. It gets dark. That was the last hunt of the year there. Season ended. So fast forward to this fall. We're running trail cameras out there again, thinking either that 10-point made it through, the one that my dad missed, or this buck made it through. Sure enough, I think October 23rd or so is the first pictures we got of him, and he really put on a decent amount of size. And I remember I showed you the first picture I got of him, and I was like, dude, look at this buck that's out of my dad's. And he's super tall framed, just not wide at all.
Right.
He is daylight walking like every day in my dad's backyard. I'm like, what am I doing? And I hunted with Mike Adams on October 25th, and I'll never forget this. I told Mike, I was like, I'm going to go to my dad's and hunt today. He's like, nah, man, come with me. Went with Mike, and we had a pretty good night hunting, but we get pictures. I'm like, okay, I have to go to my dad's the next day. My dad checks the cards that morning. Sure enough, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, this buck's out underneath an apple tree. He always went to this one apple tree. So I'm like, well, I got to be up there. Like, what am I doing? Messing around. There's the steer's asking to get shot.
Right.
So the day after Mike and I hunted, I went to Gander Outdoors, going out of business. And I said, I am buying a ghillie suit, and I'm not messing around. I'm going to go kill this deer, because I didn't want to set a ground blind up, just make too much noise, put a object that hasn't been there all year out. So buy the ghillie suit, go to my dad's the next day, pulling in the drive. This is November 2nd now.
Mm-hmm.
Pulling in the driveway, that buck that I'm there to hunt runs across the backyard chasing a doe. It's like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I gotta get ready. Throw the ghillie suit on, go sit out. I'm in just like some high grass, like not even really anything crazy, just sitting on a chair. And I could see my dad's landlord's house, barn, dogs out in the backyard barking. I could see my dad watching me hunt. Like that, this is like an urban country hunt. Like there's nothing around, but this buck is in this guy's backyard.
Right.
So
describe that edge a little bit, because I guess visually, like hearing that, and then like when I was on the property, it was a little bit different than like what I was picturing in my mind, like as you were telling me the story in the office of like how that played out, because it's almost the way that like the depth of the property, I felt like, and I guess the waterway and everything else had something to do with why that deer was using it the way he was.
yeah, right. So the there's 3 apple trees in a row in a grassy field. Right where that grassy field ends, it is just nasty thick briars that goes would be east and west on the property, and it goes like straight back for 50 acres. But that thicket is probably about a 4-acre little piece. Next to that, on the north side of that, is like a swampy, like low spot in the ground. This deer was using. He was walking the edge of that swampy stuff, coming out into the check that doe bedding area. So the apple tree is kind of in line with the swamp, but he has to walk around the swamp to get to the apple tree.
Mm-hmm.
So he was making an L. He was coming directly along the edge of the swamp, taking a 90-degree left turn, coming down the edge of that bedding area, the downwind edge of that bedding area. So I set up on the back end of that swamp, downwind of the bedding area, and also downwind of that apple tree.
Mm-hmm.
So if he comes to that apple tree, he smells all those does, doesn't smell me.
Right.
And the only place I could set up was literally, would you say 30 feet from that apple tree?
It may, like when I saw it, I was like, oh, damn, dude, you were on, that deer was on top of you.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was 10 yards.
No, it probably wasn't.
Somewhere between 23 and 28 feet probably. Like it
Very
was close.
Very close.
Yeah.
So, but it was like the only spot I could get in without going too far, and I would be on the trail that he's using, and he would get my wind.
Yeah.
And if I went any further the other way, further away from that apple tree, he only came to that apple tree. He would not go further into the yard. So he was
Right.
like checking a scrape underneath that apple tree, and then he would make a beeline through the grass yard towards the doe bedding area. He wouldn't come towards that swamp.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set up where I had to set up, and I get out there around 1:30, and I know that he just ran back towards the swamp, back towards the trail that he usually comes out on. So I'm like, okay, he's in here. I don't want to bump him. Took my time getting in. The landlord's dog is like chopping at my feet because I'm like walking through their backyard. He's barking at me. I'm like, oh my God, you're going to give me away. So I sit out there for, I don't know, 3-4 hours. It's starting to get dark. I'm like, son of a biscuit. I saw like probably 4 or 5 does. And I've told you about the deer numbers out there. Like I'll go a sit and I'll see 20, 30 deer a night. I'm like, Jesus. So I'm like, maybe I bumped a bunch of deer coming in. I don't know what happened. Meanwhile, this dog knows where I'm at, and he keeps coming and checking me and just barking his head off. He's like 20 yards away. I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I texted him. I was like, you got to get this dog out of here. So my dad comes out and distracts the dog. I have probably 45 minutes of daylight left. The dog leaves. I'm like, okay, we're good. Then I hear kind of the same scenario as last year. I hear the footsteps in the swamp stuff, and it's like something's running around back there. It's getting pretty dark at this point, and I put my camera gear away. I'm like, well, it's not going to happen tonight. Put it away, and I hear those footsteps. I'm like, oh, something's like right behind me. So I like softly grunted away from him out in that to like make it sound like there was a buck out at that apple tree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not kidding. Like 30 seconds after, I grunt, and I'm facing to my left, and I don't want to move very quickly because he's pretty close. So by the time I look to my right, he's standing on that edge, looking out into that grassy field.
Looking for that buck that was
I
grounded.
was like, holy. Like, I'm probably 10 yards from this deer at this point.
Right.
And he makes that 90-degree left turn and comes directly to the base of that apple tree, which is 28 feet from me. Saw his antlers, knew it was him, draw back, shoot, and I'm like, holy crap, like my first hunt for this buck. I knew exactly what he was going to do. Did what I had to do to get in position to do it. I just did it. I was freaking out, man.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap. So I shot him, and his reaction wasn't good. I saw what he was doing, and he was standing out in that field, tail tucked, hunched over, like, dude, how did I screw this up? He's this close.
So you thought it was a gut shot?
Yeah, I thought I just gut shot him, like straight guts.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably 60, 70 yards out in that field, but it's very dark at this point. And the only reason I can see him at this point is because the moon is shining off him. Like, I can't just fling another arrow.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how far he is. Should have anyway. Hindsight.
Maybe. Yeah.
I should have just shot. But I didn't. And I go back to my dad. I tell him I took my fingers and rubbed it on my arrow, but I left my arrow where first blood was. And I had blood all over my fingers. And my dad's waiting for me, and he's like, no luck, huh?
This is really funny.
He's like, no luck, huh? I was like, showed him my fingers. I had blood all over me. He's like, you cut yourself. I was like, no, Dad, I just shot that buck. He's like, I was watching. I never saw it happen. I was like, I just got an arrow in him. And I was like, that's exciting, but I don't know how good the hit is. And dude, I was tore up. I'm thinking, like, this deer, in my head, I kept saying this deer was 10 yards away from me. How in the world didn't I double lung him and I watch him die?
Right.
And looking back on it, I took some pictures on my phone of my shooting lane and where the arrow passed through and landed. Not saying that the arrow didn't deflect and land somewhere else, but I didn't shoot through my shooting lane, and I shot through a bunch of high grassy stuff that might have swayed my arrow one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I don't know where I hit him, and I'm jacked up, but also like hurting, like inside. I'm like, oh my God, this deer should be dead. Like, how in the world do I screw this up? So we go eat. Well, before we go eat, we go look to see if there's any more blood. I found a couple good spots of blood, but the blood was like darker than lung blood, but not like dark red liver blood. And like this is my second buck I've shot with a bow. I've shot a handful of does, but I don't have a bunch of history with tracking deer, so I really can't analyze the blood that well. So I sent a couple pictures to my buddies. They're telling me I hit him in the leg. Someone's telling me I hit him high liver. One person said I hit him in the brisket. So I'm like, I have no idea where I hit this deer.
Yeah, and really those guys are, I mean,
they're not there.
Right, they don't know the circumstances. It's really, I mean, everyone has input, but it's really hard to tell, like,
without seeing it, and being there and looking at the arrow and
shot angle, like there's so much that comes into play. Yeah.
Right, because where I was at, I'm almost shooting up at him.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, deer's a couple feet higher than you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, I go eat, and I'm like calling on my friends, like excited, like I just shot this buck, but like let's hold off. I don't know how the hit was. And my buddy Brandon, my buddy Corey, like, do you want us to come out and help you look tonight? We'll be out there. I was like, no, I don't. There's no point. I don't know if the shot's good. I didn't see him die. It's cold. I'll just wait until the morning to go look. Like, why take the risk?
Right. Which was probably, that's the right decision at that point.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, you don't know where the hit is. You don't have a lot of blood. Just suck it up. Wait until the morning. Rains all night. All night.
Like the worst.
Yeah.
The worst thing that could probably happen in your mind.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, there's no way now. And like the thick stuff, like I was like, I would have to walk on top of him to find him.
Yeah.
So called Dan Bass and Stacy Bass with their dog Remy, and they were booked, man. They had track jobs the night I shot them, track jobs the next morning. So they were like, we can get out there around 1 o'clock the next day. I was like, okay. So they come out around 1 o'clock, and it just rained, puddles, wet. I go check my blood because they want me to mark the trail that he took. No blood at all. It's all washed away. I'm like, I'm screwed, man. Like, I'm never gonna find this. Remy comes out, tracks for a little bit, and I told Stacy, I was like, okay, so we walked straight back towards that thicket and took a hard right turn. From there, I have no idea where he went. Remy comes out, and she smells first blood, smells the arrow, and she takes a left. I was like, I don't.
So the opposite way of where you thinking where the deer
I
is.
guess it's possible that he went down in there and then got back up and walked left. So I can't smell it, so I'm just going to trust this dog. Well, he restarted Remy even. And I was like, Stacy, I think he went this way. Remy goes back and wants to go hard to the left. Keeps pulling Stacy, like running. It's like, he must be over here. So tracks. Gets excited, like running hard and howling her head off. And Stacy's like, this deer's still alive. It's like, I know it's hard to hear, but this deer's still alive. So I'm like, that makes sense, man. I didn't put a good shot on him. And so I looked for a little bit after Remy left, but I never came across anything. I did find a couple dead bucks. My dad found a dead head, and I found an 8-point that was dead, and it looked like it would have been shot from that year.
Yeah.
But this is 2 weeks ago that I found these dead bucks.
So I guess at November 3rd, the dog's in there the day after you had shot this deer, and you guys not knowing, like, there were other dead deer on that piece of property that you guys did not know about until 2 weeks ago, whether that's EHD, whatever the case was.
The other guy that hunts that property shot a buck on October 31st, which is 2 days before I shot mine.
Right.
So Remy didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
It rained like a mother.
Yeah.
And there's 4 dead animals.
Right.
So, like, she could have picked up any of those trails.
2 in 72 hours, basically. Yeah.
So, I looked for a while. Everyone says when a deer's hurt or gut shot or something, it's going to go to water.
Mm-hmm.
I walked the creek, no sign of anything. After that, I'm like, he's alive, you know? So, hang a couple cameras up to try to locate him. Never comes back. Never any pictures of him. 3 weeks go by, shoot my buck in Ohio. Also on the ground in a ghillie suit. That's exciting, but I'm still, every time I close my eyes, I'm like, how? I see that deer walking to the apple tree. Like, how in the world
Yeah.
did I mess that up?
Right.
I should be tagged out.
Yeah.
And here I am freezing, trying to hunt. Like, I'm doing stuff that I don't even have to do. I had my opportunity.
Yeah.
So, hunt there in rifle season a couple times. Every time I hunt there, I'm walking a different way, like thinking I might stumble across this deer.
Mm-hmm.
Never came across them. Found that decent 8-point the one day. The next day, found another dead buck. I'm like, there's dead things everywhere in here. And so the one dead one I found, my dad was convinced that it was the one I shot. It was like, dude, 90-inch 8-point, 100-inch 8-point. I was like, Dad, there's no way. It's like I was that close to him. I know what deer I shot.
Right.
He's like, well, it went the way that you said it went. So he's convinced, like, I messed up. I shot a little buck. Fast forward, after gun season, I hang a render up there. I'm like, got to find a buck to hunt late season archery now in Pennsylvania. It's come to that. Not even a week later, my dad calls me and he's like, we found your buck. That the neighbor was out hanging posted signs because the landlord gave him some signs and he's getting pretty worried about people trespassing and stuff. So the neighbor goes out. The guy that shot the buck October 31st, he goes out and is hanging some posted signs, and he drives down this four-wheeler path on the opposite side of the creek that I walked. The buck's laying right there, dude. Not even 60 yards from my dad's house, maybe 70 yards from my dad's house.
Yeah. And probably 30 yards from where you walked the other bank.
Yeah, I just walked on the other side of the creek, and my thought process was he's either going to die in the creek or on this side, like he's not going to make it across
the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He made it.
And that creek, I mean, we were there. There was snow on the ground. So there was some precipitation going on, but it's probably 15, 18 feet wide.
Yeah.
I don't know how deep it was, but the water was moving at a decent pace.
Yeah, it
through
gets
there.
deep.
So it's not.
I almost got my dad's four-wheeler stuck in it. Like it gets.
Yeah, it's not something you can walk through with rubber boots.
No. Yeah. So it was like, he might have made it across, but it's so thick and nasty. I just never crossed my mind. Also, was influenced thinking that the deer went the other way.
Right.
Like I never did my part in searching everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like no fault to the dog at all, but I was thinking like deer's still alive and it went that way.
Right.
So I'm never gonna find it. If it is dead, it's dead a mile away somewhere.
Right.
I don't know where it's at.
And it ended up in the complete opposite direction, like almost made a half circle
Back.
from where it was shot back to where it actually died, which was in the opposite direction of where you last saw him, the opposite direction of the dog, the opposite direction of where you thought it went, where you guys were looking.
Yeah, completely behind.
Yeah.
Like close to the road.
Yeah. 70, 80 yards from the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jake made an interesting point about this too. He said like deer will go back to their bed where they feel safe when they're hurt like that. So it would make sense that the route that deer was taking to get to that apple tree, that was his bed
Mm-hmm.
that he died in or close to it.
Right.
It's down in a little valley.
Mm-hmm.
Thermals drop down that valley. He gets everything from the top. He can see the road.
Mm-hmm.
He can watch that house that's up there.
Watch that open field.
Yeah, and then the thermals from the creek when
Yep.
we pulled to him is like bulletproof.
Yeah.
Couldn't get to him there.
Right.
So it makes sense to me.
No.
That's
Yeah.
where that buck was bedded.
When you told me that this morning, I was like, yeah, that makes 100% like perfect sense. Deer's laying there, has the wind over his back. That it is down in a little bit of elevation, So in the evening times, he had the hard thermal pull from the water. You could see the road. You could see that house. You could see out in that open field or that cut cornfield, whatever it was. I think it was cut cornfield. And there's high stem count there.
Yeah.
Like you can't. That's the thing. Like you were within whatever 30, 35 yards from that deer, but there's. I mean, we stood there. There was no way to even to see that deer. I mean, you're in brown swamp grass and red brush, and then there's some bigger I guess pieces of timber there, but you'd never be able to see him from where you were.
No, you have to walk up on him to find him.
Yeah. Yep.
So, dude, it was very I was almost as excited as I would have been if I found him that day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sucks that you don't get to harvest the meat.
Right.
That's like what you're out there to do. You don't get to enjoy that food, but that deer didn't go to waste.
No.
No.
Go ahead.
There was actually, I have a pretty cool picture I can put on the video version of this, but a couple bald eagles in a tree right above them, feeding on them.
Yeah.
So that's America's deer.
That's one of the things, I don't know if it was you and I had talked about that in the office or if it was me and Jake, but I mean, I understand guys get bummed out about hitting a deer and it dying and not being able to recover. Like, it's a bad feeling that happens. But at the same time, you're not doing it in a malicious way.
Right.
Like, that's not the intent, is just to go out and shoot deer and leave them lay.
Correct.
If you're doing that, then you're a god-awful human being.
Yeah.
And in that case, like that, coyotes are eating on it, birds are eating on it, rodents. Like, it's still, I mean, as tree hugger and hipster as that sounds, it's not going to waste.
Yeah, it's not it's being utilized.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was probably just as excited, more even, because I thought for sure, like, you messed that up. You screwed up royally. Doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
And really the only thing I screwed up was the track.
Yep.
So, I mean, I learned.
And I don't even know necessarily the track. I mean, I felt like you probably did everything right other than, like, the grid search at the end.
Yeah, I just didn't cover enough ground.
Right.
I gave up too easy.
So talk about we were able to visually see the entry and the exit. Like, talk about where that shot was.
Right, so I hit low behind the front left leg, and it exited center mass low, like middle of the body, but just low.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have a better explanation. You were telling me about the anatomy and where the guy blew the air into
the lungs.
Yeah. Where that would go.
Like that, and I'm not an expert on this either, but that YouTube video was sent to me by a friend who we were arguing back and forth about the no man land, like that high above the lung, below the spine, and the way the anatomy of a deer lays out, like that's a fictitious area if the lungs are, I guess, inflated. But one of the other cool things that he pointed out in that video is the way the liver and stomach tie into the backside of the lungs. Like, guys think when they hit back lung into that liver that it's always going to be like a one lung liver type of shot, but there's actually a portion of the stomach that comes in and tucks underneath of the backside of the lung, and the liver lays in there almost like at an angle. And, like, I don't know, when I saw that entry and saw that shot, I was like, well, that makes sense why
that's where I hit.
Where you hit him, that's why the deer acted like that. It was probably, you're shooting a 2-inch expandable, so you got stomach, liver, and one lung.
Yeah. Yeah, I just hit low a little bit. And
right.
Like at the angle, I was shooting a little bit up too, so
right.
The exit was higher
right.
than the entrance. So
yep.
I got a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But
yeah, the deer only went 150 yards.
If that, yeah.
Yeah.
So it just didn't take the route that I thought it would take. It didn't take the route that the dog took me, and yeah, I just didn't do my part in covering enough ground to find it.
It's, the whole story is like, it's like the perfect storm of circumstances, and then like self-doubt starts to set in, and it's so easy, especially when you don't have this stuff on film. like you replay that stuff over and over in your mind, and then like you play so many scenarios through your mind. After a couple of days, it's like you can't even remember what is actually real and what you're maybe thinking that could be made up, or like you forget how it happened.
Yeah, your mind plays tricks on you.
Yeah.
I was convinced that I shot through that brush, and there was a little bit of fat on the arrow, and it was a brisket shot, and the deer's walking around fine.
Right.
That was at the end of it. I was convinced.
Yeah.
And like, not totally though. I shouldn't say that, because I kept telling my dad, it's like, that deer's dead. The deer lived there. We had tons of pictures of him. We don't have one since then.
Right.
Every other deer that was there came back.
Right.
We blew it out. We had a dog in there. We had 4 people walking around. But every deer came back besides that one. He's dead somewhere. There's no way I'd spooked him that bad. Like, if he's hurt, there's a 600-acre cornfield across the street. He's going to bed real close to that cornfield.
Easy food. Yep.
Go eat.
Yep.
Just never had another picture of him. So I kept telling him, like, that deer's dead, that deer's dead. He's convinced I shot the little one. And then it just so happens that the neighbor walks up and finds him. It's actually, there's more to it. Like, there's more irony to the whole neighbor thing. So my dad tells the neighbor that he shot this buck because he didn't want this guy to think that I came in there and I wounded a buck. He's like,
right.
He doesn't know you, and he might be a little upset if I let my son come in here and wound the biggest buck on the property.
Right.
So he tells him that he shot the buck. Also, in gun season, I walk up on this neighbor in a tree stand.
I don't think I know this story.
No, I didn't tell you this. So I take my buddy Matt out on the last Saturday. No, not the last Saturday. They're just like a Wednesday or Thursday of gun season. So take my buddy Matt out there. My dad hunted this one tree stand, missed the 9-point. I hunted that same tree stand, missed the coyote. Like, there was a bunch of action. So take my buddy Matt up there. We're going to go sit in this. It's a double man stand. We'll just go bullshit and sit in the stand. I'm walking up to it. That guy is in the stand. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like 40 yards from him, and I just saw him. I just messed this guy up. So I backtrack, walk back down, tell my dad, I'm like, Andy's up in that stand.
Is that the blind guy?
No.
Oh, okay.
The landlord is
okay.
blind.
Got it.
Andy helps the guy out, but
Gotcha.
Andy is up in that stand. I'm like, that would be so funny if the blind guy was hunting.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, what? All right. I had the story mixed up a little bit. I thought, okay, I got it straightened out.
The blind guy's Dennis.
Gotcha. Okay.
Andy is in that stand. I'm like, okay, well, I brought Matt up here. Like, we got to hunt still, but I don't know what to do. That was my only plan. I don't have a plan B. So I walk through that bedding area, circle around Andy, and go to the other side of the property. In my travels, I must have kicked like 4 or 5 deer up, and they ran past Andy a ways and kept going. I'm sitting there, and I see Orange walking through the woods, and Andy gets out of his tree. I'm like, oh, my God, he's going to come yell at me or something. He's walking out, so I get up. My buddy Matt's not really allowed to be there. He doesn't have permission. I just brought him along with me.
Right.
So I'm like, Matt, stay here. I'm going to handle this. So I go up to him. I'm talking to him, and I'm apologizing like left and right. He's not mad at all. He's like, oh, those does ran up there, and he's like, I know this property like the back of my hand. They're gone. So they're not going to come back until tomorrow. So I'm done here. So that's the first time I met this guy. I'm talking to him about the hunting season and how it went, and he's like, yeah, I shot a buck October 31st. And I'm like, my dad told you that he shot a buck. So I'm like, yeah, my dad shot one November 2nd, never found it. Meanwhile, I'm talking about myself.
Right.
So Andy, like 4 or 5 days later, finds the buck, takes it to my dad, and my dad's like, that's my son's, that's my buck. Because he told Andy that he shot it.
Right.
So it was just pretty funny how that all tied together. It was like the first time I met Andy, I'm screwing up his hunt. My dad lied to him and told him that he shot this buck when I really shot it. It was just a cluster.
Yeah, that's funny. So you tagged a deer.
Yes, I used my tag.
We took an You took him to the taxidermist Monday night.
Yep, after the Cribs episode.
Was he as big? I mean, was he what you thought he was?
So, kind of yes and no. First glance, I showed you that picture, and you're like, I'll shoot that deer.
Yeah, I thought it was like a 130s 8-pointer in Pennsylvania, like high and tight.
Yeah, you're like, dude, that's a great deer. Like,
yeah.
I'd shoot him, and that makes me even more excited. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So we keep getting more and more pictures of them, like adding it up in my head. I'm like, oh, 16-inch spread, blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, 132, 135-inch deer. I'm like, hell yeah. Like, so that's also playing in my head that I shot this deer. I'm like, I just shot a 130-inch 8-point in Pennsylvania, and he screwed it up.
Right.
So when we finally get him, we go look at him, and I'm thinking, like, what a beautiful animal, man. Like,
hell yeah.
Perfect long G2s, like tight, cool frame, awesome brow tines that like both curl out.
Yep.
And I'm tickled to death. And my dad's like, probably 118-inch buck. I'm like, dang, really?
Like knocking the wind out of your sails a little bit.
Yeah, it's like not that matters at all, but
right.
You want to make Pope and Young.
Yeah.
So I text Jake earlier in the year, sent him that picture, and I was like, Jake, is this buck gonna go Pope and Young? I gotta know. He said, whew, it might. It's going to be close. And we ended up putting the tape on him. He's 125 3/4.
Yep.
So, like, just made
right
Pope
there.
and Young.
Yep.
Gross Pope and Young.
Yep.
So,
it's an awesome deer.
Yeah. He's
10, 11-inch G2s, 5 or 6-inch brow tines.
Beautiful frame.
He has more mass than what I had thought, even just holding them.
Yeah. Just heavy rack.
Yeah.
Only 13 inches across, but
yeah.
I think it's pretty. He's unique. He's cool.
Yeah.
He just, like, I saw the first pictures of him, and I was like, man, that's the deer I want to kill. I love that look of him. High, just like heavy frame. So, yeah, I think he's about as big as I thought he was.
Yeah.
So, maybe a little smaller, but
that's awesome.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
And I made the joke that his drying period's already up, so.
Yeah, that wasn't a green score.
Yeah.
No longer a green score. So is 2019 this is the first year that you've tagged out in both states with a bow?
Well, this is my first buck with a bow in Pennsylvania. This is my third buck with a bow ever. So 2 in Ohio, 1 this year, 1 2 years ago, and then this is my first PA bow kill buck.
Right.
So, yeah, this is the first year that I've tagged in 2 states with a bow. First year ever, even with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
I've never killed one with a gun in Ohio.
Well, the one you killed last year was PA rifle season, but
Yep.
nothing in Ohio.
Yep.
Got it.
So
That's right.
Never twice, never 2 states. So I remember last time last time I was on, I said that's now my goal. It's like I didn't meet the goal of shooting 130-inch deer in Ohio, but now my goal is to shoot one in PA and tag out in both states. So I fulfilled my goal of that, and I fulfilled my Pope and Young goal in PA.
Yep, that's awesome.
And go ahead.
That's a pretty. I mean, you've had a pretty dynamic and big year, just like on a personal level.
I really have.
Quitting your CPA job, your accounting job, like going full time with another company, and then leaving that to come work at Exodus, and then like it's been
nuts, man.
Yeah, it's been a pretty big 8 months, 9 months, or whatever it's been.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible, and just like how much I've learned, from the time that I started here, my knowledge of any hunting knowledge that I had till now, like how it all comes to fruition. Like I just killed. I'm not bragging by any means, but I'm kind of proud. I killed 2 bucks on the ground in a ghillie suit, 3 weeks apart from each other.
Yeah.
In high pressure areas.
Very high pressure. Yeah. That's
pretty accomplishing feeling.
I would not know.
But I mean, honestly, it has been just like the dream year. Like follow my dream career wise.
Yep.
I get to hunt a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Tag my second buck ever on a property that I worked my ass off on. Go to Pennsylvania, kill my first ever PA buck with a bow. Like, but also at the same times, like, the ups and downs of it all. It just all came together, and I really couldn't be any happier with how it went. But now I'm sitting here thinking, like, what the hell am I going to do with myself?
Yeah,
Can't kill a buck now.
Nope.
But it's all my energy now has been geared towards finding next year's.
That's just it. Yeah, getting ready for next year.
Yep.
Already, and it's only. I guess it's not even. It's still 2019. I'm not sure when this will air, but it's the 18th of December right now. But it's been super cool to watch the progression of you as a hunter, and like everything that you're doing here, and like how that progresses, and then like you just consuming the content that you're actually working on, and like putting that to use like in the field. It's been pretty cool to witness that.
Well, thank you. It's like the coolest thing ever. It's like I have a Rolodex of information that I'm putting out, that I'm like responsible for putting on YouTube. And if I weren't to consume that, if I didn't have this job, I don't know that I would as persistently listen and take that information in. So it's like I'm getting it handed to me on a silver platter.
Right. Yeah.
It's my choice to use it or not. And
Yep.
I decided to put it to use, and what these guys are telling you it's not a lie.
Right.
The information that we're putting out is there to be helpful.
100%.
I am the exhibit A of learning from that. Like, I'm a millennial hunter. Learned from podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, podcasts and YouTube.
Yeah.
Basically. That's cool. Well, we're rolling in on just over around 40 minutes or so. Is there anything else you want to touch on or talk about before we close this thing down?
No, I think that sums up the year. Ready to move on into the trade show season and see what that's like being with the company, not as a spectator.
Mm-hmm.
And get ready for turkey season. Got some exciting things coming up this spring, and
yep,
even plans for the fall already. So
yep. It never ends. That's one of the things that we always talk about. Like, you just better know the process, because it's every day.
Also, yep. Also, if you're listening and you haven't checked out our whitetail crib series, check that out on YouTube. We just released another episode today.
Yep. With
a nice fella in West Virginia. So leave us some feedback on those videos. We're trying to take in everything that the viewers want to see, put that to use. So
yes. Yeah, check that stuff out on YouTube. We put that out to, like Cameron said, to help educate people. Some of it is for, I guess, entertainment, the whitetail crib stuff. So check that stuff out. Leave us the feedback, because that is what we are kind of tailoring that specific show towards.
Yeah, 100%.
Is what people
want to see.
What people want to see. So give us your feedback on that stuff, so we give you guys what you want. And as far as the podcast goes, this thing is growing every month. We're getting more and more and more downloads. I don't know what our numbers were for November, but well over 10, 12, 15,000 downloads in October, but we still only have 120 reviews.
Oh, boy.
So if you're listening to the show, leave us a review. It helps us a ton to grow inside of iTunes and all those other podcast channels. So if you're consuming this stuff, we don't plug sponsors. We don't hard sell stuff here. We do it to help build a community and try to provide some type of value. So we humbly appreciate those reviews. Absolutely. So if you haven't done it, leave us one. And until next time, we will see you later.